So, on to Learn. What is it? So, it's what's called a virtual learning environment. Sometimes it's called Blackboard, sometimes it's Blackboard Learn, sometimes it's Learn. Basically, Blackboard are the company that make it and Learn is the product. So the terms are kind of interchangeable, but we tend to call it Learn in Edinburgh. A VLE or virtual learning environment you may have come across before, things like Moodle or Canvas. Essentially, it's the same idea. It's a system that's set up to allow dissemination of resources to students and sharing of them from within your course. We have more than 5,000 courses added each year to Learn, so that happens over the summer. What that means is every year we add new iterations of each course. So if students start in first year, for example, it means that they keep those courses with them until they finish at Edinburgh. So they'll continue to carry them forward year on year because we create a new version of that course each year. Actually accessing it, there's one thing that you need, which is your university login. So once you have that, you should be able to access it in a couple of different ways. You can go through a browser or the Blackboard app, and I'll show you both of those in a moment or two. The browser, so again, you could use this obviously on a mobile device as well, but generally it's probably a laptop or desktop machine. To get in, the easiest way to go is to go into MyEd. And that's mainly because MyEd is the hub for all of the different elements of your university life. So it's a really useful one to use. It's a one-stop shop. It's a one sign-in as well, which means you don't then have to try and remember lots of different passwords for the different systems. So by going into MyEd, you can then choose to go into the Studies tab at the top, and then Learn is sitting in there, and you can launch it from there. When you do that, it will launch in the panel in MyEd that looks something like this. Now, people can get a little bit worried about this sometimes because there's a list of courses there, and it doesn't always necessarily reflect all of the courses that you're enrolled on straight away. It's usually only the courses for that particular academic year, as you can see there. So that's what you should see. So any older courses, perhaps, you won't see at that point. You may not see them even at this point in the year. It depends when the course organisers actually enrol people and make those courses available. So that will vary a little bit. However, you can click on the link there, and that will take you to the Learn landing page that says Learn, or you can click on the link for the course itself, which will take you directly into the course. The Learn landing page will look something like this, and it will give you a full list of your courses. But again, that may, at this time of year, change a little bit as the weeks get closer to the start of the first semester. They usually populate a little bit more, obviously. If you're going to use the app, then again, you'll need your university login for that, obviously. But there are apps on the Android and the Apple Store. It looks like this icon. So there are two apps. There's one for students and there's one for instructors. So obviously the one that you would be most interested in would be the student one. So for some bizarre reason, it has a pencil. Of course, everything's completely digital, but a pencil, why not? So that's the app that you need, and you download it. And then when you try to log into it, then you'll need to put in your university login at that point. Obviously, on the app, it's going to look slightly different. So again, you've got your list of courses, and the actual 3 bars in the sort of top left is where you find your menu. So again, by clicking on that, it will obviously change the screen, and you'll start to see other things appear on there. Whichever way you go in, you will get to your course. And so your course will look something like this. Now, the content on the left-hand side is your navigation menu. That's how you move from different parts of your course. And then what it displays in the center and the rest of that page will change. Now, we've had a project for the last 2 years called Learn Foundations, which the purpose of that has been to try and create more consistency in the approach and in the appearance of Learn. So hopefully most of your courses when you're enrolled in them will look something like, we now have 20 of the 22 schools using a form of this template, which means that the left-hand menu should be consistent, other than perhaps 1 or 2 extra links which the school have agreed to add. And then in the middle, what you see when you click on any of those pages may vary slightly as well. So for example, this is the business school one. They have a link on the left-hand menu to virtual classroom. Not every school necessarily will have that. That's something that they have specific to them. But most of the other links on there and the language that's used in them, we're trying to improve that consistency because it makes it easier for you to find what you're looking for, and it makes it easier for staff to actually put things in the right place as well. So what will you actually find on your course? Now, that will vary obviously from course to course and how people decide to use Learn and the purpose of it for them. Generally, you can be fairly assured that you'll have your course materials sitting in there. So that will sit in the course materials area. How that's structured will vary, again, from course to course. People may set it up in a folder system, which is by week or by subject area or topic. So again, that really just depends on the person who's organising the course. Assignments will certainly be in there. So any work that's actually expected to be submitted will generally be done through Learn. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment or two. Grades will appear here as well. Just be careful that the grades that are seen within Learn aren't necessarily the final ratified grades. They're indicative, but for your final grades, you will need to look at Euclid. Feedback will appear in here alongside any assigned and submitted work. Resource lists, which are what most people would probably refer to as reading lists. We're calling them resource lists now because there are different types of media which can be added in here too. So it may be videos, it may be images and so on too. So rather than just specifically reading, it's a resource list. Lecture recordings are accessible through Learn as well. So again, by clicking on that, you'll get access to the lectures specific to your course. Course contacts I'll come back to in a moment or two, but the people who are organising and overseeing your course should have their information on the course as well. And finally, announcements. And I'll talk a bit more about the communication that you get from Learn in a moment, but announcements are a place where you can go to find that information in your course. So I mentioned assignments, and there are two different options for how people actually create and submit their assignments. One is called Turnitin, and one is Learn itself. So Learn has its own process for submitting assignments. To you, it won't actually look much different, whichever one you're doing. Basically, you're uploading a file into a folder, whichever way you're doing it. So that's generally the same. The way it's marked and the feedback is submitted may look slightly different. But they will both sit within Learn and they're both integrated. Obviously Learn one is, but Turnitin as well. So whichever one that's being used, and it will vary from course to course, sometimes even within the course. But you should be giving that information ahead of time as well. I mentioned communications in terms of announcements, and announcements are like messages which come out about your course, and they should be relevant to course information as well. So things about, for example, guest lectures that are happening, or lecture rooms are being moved. So things that are specific to the course. The notifications are slightly different. The notifications are more the sort of reminders that you get on your phone if you've got a calendar event coming up, for example. Now, notifications can be determined both by the person who's organising the course, but also by the student. So there is the option to go in and actually choose what notifications you want to get. So notifications can be things like when there's something added to the course, so a bit of new information, the lecture notes are uploaded, then you get a notification. It can sometimes be for things which you're not all that interested in knowing about immediately. So again, you can discriminate at that level and choose what things you want to actually find out about. I've put a link in the chat which takes you to the Learn pages for students, which will give you an overview of various different elements. And also within there, in the Getting Started, there's a bit about notifications and how you can actually determine which notifications you receive. If you do have any questions about your course content, then there's probably two people who are responsible for answering those. One is the course organiser, who tends to be the academic, sometimes more than one, who's responsible overall for the course. That will probably be the person who's doing most of the lecturing on the course as well, but not always. The second person is the course secretary, and they're usually somebody within the teaching office who's responsible for the administration of the course. So if you have an issue with the content within the course, so you can't find the lecture materials that you thought should be there, or you're having difficulty with an assignment, then those are the people that you should go and speak to. And their contact details should be in the course as well. That's certainly good practice that we're trying to encourage. If, however, you're having different sorts of questions, so you're having questions more of a technical nature, something's not working in the way that you expect it to. One of the most common ones that we get, certainly from students, because it's obviously understandable that it's a concern, is if you're trying to submit an assignment and it's not working for some reason, it's not going. Now, usually that's 5 minutes before the deadline is due and people start to panic. There should be a procedure in place for that from course organiser or course secretary. In that, perhaps what they ask you to do, and again, what's probably useful for you, is to take a screenshot of any error messages you get, any issues that are occurring, and then let the course secretary know, excuse me, but also get in touch with IS Helpline. And the address there is for IS Helpline Information Services, because we're the people from a technical perspective that can help resolve any of those issues. There's two other ways if things aren't quite as urgent as that, perhaps. There's inline help within Learn. So there's a tab at the top of your Learn page that gives you additional help. Now, that knows that you're a student and knows where you are in Learn. So if you're looking at grades, for example, when you click on it, the suggestions that you'll get will be things to do with looking at your grades. However, you can also type into it and actually search for other information. So there's basically text and videos within there which should help you get used to using Learn and answer most of the questions probably that you have. There's also the web pages, which as I have just put the link up for as well, which will give you an overview of Learn and how things are done. And there's a few videos in there as well that might help you with things like, for example, discussion boards. If you're having to submit posts to discussion boards, how that works. And I say, the Information Services Helpline ultimately is the place to come to if you're really struggling and you don't know how to do something, or something isn't working in the way that you expect it to. That will generally go through to the first line help desk, who'll then escalate that if they can't answer that question appropriately, and they'll do it as far as they can.